Hi there, everyone. Welcome to today's Read Aloud for the 2.10 U.S. History lesson, Ratification. Writing the Constitution was a challenge. The task of convincing the states to approve it was even more daunting. Americans were proud of their young republic, and many were afraid to adopt a stronger central government. They thought adopting the Constitution would be taking a step back, a return to what they had fought so hard to eliminate. The debate between Federalists who wanted to adopt the Constitution and the Anti-Federalists who feared it raged in state houses, taverns, and homes. Would the proposed Constitution preserve the fledgling republic or lead to Okay, so for today, remember to go to lesson resources and get the things you need for today's lesson, your reading guide and lesson answer key. And the goals for today's lesson are explain the major arguments for the Federalists and Anti-Federalists and their supporters, explain the major arguments of the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, identify the major supporters and opponents of ratification, and recognize the Federalist Papers as a major factor in gaining ratification. Okay, so like I said, make sure you get your reading guide and lesson answer key. And we're going to start with reading pages 186 through 189. Okay, starting here with the Federalists argue for ratification. Crafting the Constitution was one challenge. Convincing the states to ratify, which means approve, the new document was possibly an even greater challenge. The framers agreed that the Constitution would only come into effect after 9 states ratified it. The new Constitution surprised many and shocked more than a few. It provided for a strong federal government, included a powerful chief executive in the new office of the presidency. Americans vividly remember their recent battles against British tyranny. Would the new federal government be any better than the oppressive British Parliament? Would a powerful president turn into... Let's turn the page. Turn into a tyrannical king, had not Americans just fought and died to secure liberty against such threats? The debate over whether to ratify the new Constitution took place in meeting halls, homes, and newspapers. Throughout the states, many newspapers published essays written by Virginia's James Madison and 2 colleagues, Alexander Hamilton and John Jay of New York. Writing under the pen name Publius, a Roman patriot, they produced a remarkable set of 85 political editorials aimed at winning support for the new Constitution. Hamilton and Madison did most of the writing. John Jay fell ill and produced just 5 essays. These writings became known as the Federalist Papers and were later published as a book, The Federalist. Madison, Hamilton, and Jay argued that the new Constitution was in accord with the Republican ideals of the American Revolution. It would help secure liberty, for which Americans had fought. That struggle, they reminded readers, had been fought to overthrow tyranny and establish a Republican form of government. Yes, history had proven republics to be fragile, prone to infighting and instability that could lead to the rise of a military dictatorship. But the Federalists argued the new Constitution, with a strong federal government and a system of checks and balances, would help provide a Republican remedy for the evils most incident to Republican government. The Anti-Federalist argument. Not everyone agreed. Opponents of the new Constitution, who came to be known as Anti-Federalists, worried that a strong central government would override the public good and impose tyranny on the people. Patrick Henry charged that the document squinted towards monarchy. Accustomed to local rule, many people believed that republics could only thrive in small geographical areas. They looked to the ancient Greek and Roman city-states and to some recent Swiss examples as proof that republics must remain small if they are to succeed. Many Anti-Federalists were concerned that the new Constitution included no Bill of Rights. In Philadelphia, one of the strongest voices in support of a Bill of Rights was that of George Mason of Virginia, Washington's neighbor on the Potomac. Mason had crafted much of Virginia's Constitution. Skip to the next page. He crafted much of Virginia's Constitution and Declaration of Rights in 1776. Many state constitutions included language that identified and protected the people's individual rights. In many cases, this language was borrowed directly from what Mason had written for Virginia. Mason remained adamant that a Bill of Rights be included in the new national constitution, so adamant that he refused to sign the document without one. Ratification. Despite concerns and objections, one after another state I can't read this. Despite the concerns and objections, one after another, the states voted to ratify the new federal constitution. In December 1787, Delaware was the first state to ratify. In June 1788, when New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify, the Constitution was officially approved. But before the new government could act effectively, two large states, Virginia and New York, needed to be brought on board. In these states, debates on the merits of the Constitution continued, led by strong anti-federalist opposition. In Williamsburg, Virginia, Patrick Henry and Richard Henry Lee rallied against the Constitution, but the promise that a Bill of Rights would be added to the Constitution, as well as the combined influence of Washington, Madison, and Governor Edmund Randolph, proved too strong to resist. By the end of June, Virginia voted to ratify. In New York, Alexander Hamilton twisted every arm he could. In July 1788, New York approved the Constitution, but by the narrowest of margins. Still, it was enough. Two states, Rhode Island and North Carolina, took another year or two before they ratified the Constitution. But in the meantime, the other states moved forward, preparing to elect the first president of the United States. Little short of a miracle. George Washington described the results of the Constitutional Convention and the state's ratification of the document as little short of a miracle. James Madison concurred, writing to Jefferson in Paris that it was impossible to consider it as less than a miracle. By any measure, the American journey from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution of the United States is a remarkable triumph. Though the Constitutional Convention rejected some of Madison's cherished ideas, delegates from many states and the American people themselves embraced the idea of a stronger federal government for the sake of creating a more perfect union. At Philadelphia in 1787, most of the framers of the Constitution were learned men, well schooled in history and political theory, and not afraid to innovate. They knew that throughout history, revolutions for liberty had often succeeded only for a brief while only to collapse when the overthrown tyrant was replaced with a new one. Their experience in the Revolution, as well as their vigorous debates in Philadelphia, guided them in designing a practical plan of government aimed at securing liberty and preventing a lapse into anarchy or tyranny. The United States has the world's oldest written national constitution. The document that was ratified by 13 states with a population of 4 million people still guides the modern nation of 50 states and more than 300 million people. With the major exception of the period of the Civil War from 1861 to 1865, the Constitution has successfully served as the nation's supreme law for more than 200 years. And that is where we end today, but let's skip back here just to look a little bit at the parts that the excerpts. Here, this excerpt here is from the preamble of the Constitution. And as it notes in large letters, we the people, because they really wanted to show that this is for all the people of America, not just for a select few, but everyone in the country. And here's a nice graph of checks and balances. That was a key premise of the government under the Constitution, the three branches, the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch, and the checks and balances they have upon one another, so no one branch would be more powerful than the other. And then here's just an excerpt from one of the Federalist Papers, and that is something you're also looking at for your assignment for today, the graded assignment 210. Okay, so when we look at your graded assignment, you have to go to this Google Doc link and make sure to be able to download it, to write on it. You go to download, to download it, go to File, Download As, and choose your format. So let's look at that here. Bring up the assignment. See, so up here you have File, Download As, and then if you just want it as a Word doc or an open Office document, those are the two choices you have there that are probably the most popular choices. And then you can download it and open it up on your own computer to be able to fill it out. But what you're doing for the graded assignment is as follows. First of all, read directions. Please read the two primary sources below and then answer the following questions. The rubric at the bottom of the page will be used to evaluate your responses. So you're looking at Federalist Paper 84 and then Anti-Federalist Paper 84. So you have the Federalist Paper that is supporting ratification of the Constitution, and then an Anti-Federalist argument from number 84, the Anti-Federalists saying why they don't think the Constitution should be ratified. And for your questions, you have, first of all, from looking at the Federalist Paper 84, state in one sentence the main idea, and then looking at a quote and then trying to figure out what argument is this excerpt making and why is it important. And then for the Anti-Federalist paper, once again, in one sentence, the main idea, and then again, a quote, and then putting that thought into your own words and analyzing that. And then the fifth question for this assignment is, if you were living during the colonial time period, will you find yourself siding with the Federalists or the Anti-Federalists? Explain why and defend your position. And in your explanation, you should give us key ideas, us your teachers that is, key ideas of Federalist arguments or Anti-Federalist arguments. So to show, just don't say, yep, I would be a Federalist because I agree with them. No, you need to support that with what were some of the key arguments of the Federalists or the Anti-Federalists that you agreed or disagreed with. So you just have to give that evidence for that last question. Make sure you give that evidence, otherwise no evidence, no points. And then here's the rubric, like we said, that you can kind of check and see if you think you're fulfilling those to get an exemplary grade. And so that is the completion of lesson 2.10. I'm really focusing on the Federalist and Anti-Federalist arguments for ratification. If you have any questions, please let your teachers know. Bye-bye.